Hello, my creeplings. We're back, and we are actually covering a movie that was mentioned in one of my comments way back when I did Ghost Ship. So I'm sorry I forgot to write your name down, but whoever the commenter was, if you're still watching, thank you for bringing this back onto my radar, because I almost completely forgot about this movie as a horror movie. I tend to think of this movie as more of an action movie. It is classified as a science fiction horror. We are talking about the movie Deep Blue Sea, released July 28th, 1999. Directed by Renny Harlin. That name should be very familiar to you action fans, because he is the director behind Die Hard 2, Cliffhanger, but this is not the first time he's dabbled in the horror genre. He's also responsible for Nightmare on Elm Street 4. And this movie was kind of a redemption film for him, because he had not had a hit since Cliffhanger. As a matter of fact, he was responsible for what is considered one of the biggest bombs in modern cinema, Cutthroat Island. I have not seen Cutthroat Island from the start to the end. I have caught bits and pieces of it. It didn't seem that bad, but I may have only caught, the best 15 minutes of it in bits and pieces. But it was considered a very, very big bomb, though. So, this was and I'm going to say that I think he redeemed himself, because out of a budget of anywhere from 60 to 82 million, there's a wide array of range here, just simply because accounts vary. I know that they started off with a production budget of 60 million and it ballooned over that, but seeing the effects that they had to do, I can understand it. But out of that, we'll say 82 million max was their budget. They brought back 165 million in the box office. So I'm gonna say this redeemed Mr. Renny Harlin to prove he could do an action film again. This was written by Duncan Kennedy, Donna Powers, and Wayne Powers. Not a huge cast list, but a lot of huge names in the cast list. We have Thomas Jane. Those of you who know Thomas Jane know him from Boogie Nights, the 2004 version of The Punisher, and Stephen King's The Mist, directed or produced by Frank Darabont. I know Frank Darabont from The Walking Dead had. So there's a lot of, he knows his action, he knows his horror. He plays a character named Carter Blake. Saffron Burrows, as Dr. Susan McAllister. She's known for Circle of Friends. I know her from Troy with Brad Pitt and Orlando Bloom and Eric Bana. I believe she played Andromache. And then she also did a couple seasons, or 1 or 2 seasons, I believe, on Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., the television show. We have LL Cool J as Sherman Preacher Dudley, rapper who's been around since the 80s, has had a lot of big hits. I think my favorite of his is Mama Said Knock You Out. But he's also been on NCIS LA since its inception as the backdoor pilot on NCIS, actually. He's still continuing to play Agent Sam Hanna on Hawaii, I believe, NCIS Hawaii. But he was also in Halloween H2O, so he's, done his time in the horror genre as well. Hosted Lip Sync Battle on, oh god, I can't remember the name of which network it was on, but the guy's a hard worker, and he's done a lot of stuff. He's very versatile, and this just proves that point even more. We have an actress named Jacqueline McKenzie as Janice Higgins. They call her Jan. She's an Australian actress who has racked up a lot of TV guest credits. I personally, when I was going through her list, didn't recognize anything off the top of my head, but that doesn't mean she's not a good actress. That just means she doesn't play in the same circles I do. Michael Rappaport as Tom Scoggins. They call him Scoggs. True Romance, Coplands. He's been in a ton of TV shows and music videos. When I see him, I know that we are getting a good working man character 90% of the time, and sometimes a pretty funny one as well. I really do enjoy when I see him show up on a cast list. Adia Turturro as Brenda Kearns. She's done a lot of TV as well. We've got a Skarsgård alert. Stellan Skarsgård. Most people know him as either Bootstrap Bill from the final two of the original Pirates of the Caribbean trilogy. Speaking so fast I'm stuttering. He played Bootstrap Bill, which was Will Turner's father. And then Dr. Selvig in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, from originally introduced in Thor and showed up in a couple of other things. So we've got the older Skarsgård. And then the biggest name on this list, the bad motherfucker himself, Mr. Samuel L. Jackson, everybody. Strangely enough, I don't think he said motherfucker in this one, as Russell Franklin. I really don't feel like I need to list this guy's filmography, but for the fun of it, I'll name my two favorite Samuel L. Jackson roles. Of course, there's Jules in Pulp Fiction, and Mace Windu, Jedi Master, in the prequel trilogy. So, but I really feel like I shouldn't have to mention anything he's been in. The man's been prolific, and he's kind of a pulp culture meme on his own. Solid performance by him, by the way. So, our plot involves a remote underwater facility that, side note, used to be a submarine, I think they called it a submarine depot in World War II. It was decommissioned by the U.S. military, and this company picked it up pretty cheap. Found that interesting. I don't know why. I just did. So, but it's remote. It's in the middle of the ocean, in the middle of nowhere. Dr. Susan McAllister and Dr. Jim Whitlock, Jim Whitlock being the Stellan Skarsgård character. I forgot to mention that. I got so excited about talking about Bootstrap Bill and Dr. Selvig. So Jim Whitlock is the Skarsgård character. Now they're conducting research on mako sharks. They're doing work on their brains to help reactivate dormant human brain cells, like those found in Alzheimer's patients. Interesting idea. And anybody who's watched a family member succumb to dementia and Alzheimer's, I'm sorry, that's a bitch. It's terrible. So I understand what the doctors were going for here, but just say by the end of this all, it was a spectacular fuck up. So we are at this facility. One of the sharks escapes the facility, and it attempts to attack a boat of young adults. It's two couples. You know, they're out doing their romantical shit. They are caught by the character of Carter Blake. He's their shark wrangler. So the shark has been caught, but because of what happened, Dr. McAllister ends up in a boardroom, basically pleading for her financial backing from, I believe it's Chimera Pharmaceuticals, and they decide that they're going to send their corporate executive, Russell Franklin, Sam Jackson character, to investigate the facility and make sure that it's still a good bet to back this research. Because, yes, a breakthrough in Alzheimer's research, a cure or a treatment that is very effective, that would send their stock through the roof. But if they fail, or if they keep if they're too slow with research, it's just a money pit. So yes, I understand them sending this executive to investigate the facility. On the flight there, we get mentioned that Russell was involved in something in the Alps and how heroic he was. We get bits and pieces of this story as the film goes on. So you get the feeling he's kind of this intrepid adventurer sort. So he's kind of perfect for being in this position. Which is really funny considering there's a line from the LL Cool J character later that it's kind of stereotypical, it's kind of tropey in movies. It made me chuckle just simply because it's the writers, the actors, the cast, those involved poking fun at the trope. I'm not laughing because of what was said. I chuckled because it was kind of funny that the trope was brought up in a tongue-in-cheek way. So, anyway, they get there. Russell is pawned off, or passed off, I shouldn't say pawned off, passed off to Jan Higgins, who is their marine biologist, and she shows him around, tells him a lot about the facility, introduces Carter Blake, who does this really cool move with a tiger shark that they had picked up from some fishermen. I don't know how to properly explain it, but he ends up riding this shark in a way because the shark's got a license plate caught in his mouth, and he gets the license plate out. It's quite an interesting stunt, and probably CGI animation mixed in with it. It looked really cool, and it makes the Carter Blake character just, he's that much of a BMF, so to speak. So, again, we're introduced to Preacher. That's what most people call him. He's Sherman Dudley, played by LL Cool J. They call him Preacher. Preacher has a bird. Preacher is their culinary. He's their chef. I should mention that they run a skeleton crew over the weekend, and Russell arrives on a Friday. So they're unloading everyone for the weekend, and that just leaves this crew of Blake, the three doctors, Preacher, Scoggins, and Brenda. Brenda's their traffic controller, a tower controller. She coordinates sending people off, getting people in. She's their radio tower. She's their communications expert. So it's just that group left with now their guest, Russell. So we are introduced to Preacher. He has some kind of parrot-type bird. Part of me wants to say it's a member of the lorikeet family, but I don't know that lorikeets get that big. Okay, one of Mel's special interests is exotic birds. Not enough that I could raise them, but I know that I love going to my local zoo where I can feed lorikeets. They have several parrots and cockatiels in a show that they used to do that I absolutely loved. Anyway, this parakeet, lorikeet, this exotic bird talks. He got a potty mouth, and his name is Bird. Talks about, you have a fat ass and things. It's quite cute and funny. But it's just a side piece that I wanted to mention. I liked the bird. Pretty bird too, I might add. So he's a foul-mouthed fowl. How about that? So we're introduced to them. They're Preacher's preparing dinner, and we go back and forth, and we spend some time. We learn, we meet Scoggins, and we see the two doctors discussing, what they're going to do tomorrow to prove that they are that they're worthy of this financial backing. And Dr. Whitlock mentions, we moved the timeline up 2 months ahead of schedule. Something could be wrong, could go wrong. And she's like, you wait your entire moment, for your entire career for this one moment, and then it's tomorrow. Saying that, basically hinting that, timelines catch up to you and all that stuff. So the next day, Susan and Jim prove their research is working by what they're doing, or what they have done. We find this out the night before, because they throw a small birthday party on deck for Dr. McAllister. And as part of the chit-chat table talk, we find out that they've been using a hormonal enhancer to grow the shark's brain, exponentially sized. Russell Franklin mentions, I'm surprised that, we can do that without any kind of genetic messing around with their genetics. And they're like, well, we don't need to, we have this. Plus, it's kind of, genetic manipulation is against the charter of Chimera. So that's what they've been doing to get the sharks to have bigger brains, so that they could remove a certain protein complex from the shark's brain tissue. So that's what they're demonstrating in this underwater laboratory. So the facility, the surface is the pens going down into the water for the sharks. The surface is the radio tower, and then where the boats and helicopters come in. The rest of the facility goes down underwater. First level down is living quarters. Second level is wet labs. And then the third level's got a mini sub and other things going on with it that I can't remember everything. This is important for later. So they're doing this test. They extract the proteins from, I believe they're grabbing their largest shark. They have 3 sharks, 2 Gen 1s and 1 Gen 2 female. And I believe the Gen 2 female is the biggest one. They've been manipulating with this hormone. Leading up to this point, we also get hints through conversations that, like, Carter, Blake, and Scoggins are talking, and Carter's kind of like hinting that they're getting smarter. Since when do they hunt in packs? Is something that was mentioned in a conversation. How do they swore that shark that got out and attacked the boat was, it was locked in its pen, so how did it get out of the pen? All kind of hinting that there's something kind of strange going on with these sharks. And again, at this point, there's a point where on the monitors the sharks swim backwards. Sharks shouldn't be able to do that. So they remove the protein complex and they test it against brain tissue from a human that had Alzheimer's, and it seems to work. So they're all happy, excited, yay! They kind of forgot, or I don't want to say they kind of forgot, they kind of seemed like they're celebrating too much. The shark is still in its kind of half pen there, kind of half submerged so it can breathe, because these are fish. They do breathe through gills. They're not like dolphins where they can, breathe air. And the shark gets a little rowdy and bites Jim's arm off. So good effect there. Jim goes into shock. And so Brenda in the tower calls a helicopter. At this time, there's also one hell of a squall brewing, and it has started to hit. So she braves through the storm, the heavy rains and the strong winds to help evacuate Jim. So Jim's being lifted on the cable, on the stretcher, but the cable jams. So he's hanging out on a stretcher over the pen. Well, one of the sharks jumps up and grabs the stretcher in its jaws. This fucker is strong enough that it pulls the helicopter by this stretcher and cable and crashes it into the tower. So we not only lose the pilots for the helicopter and Jim, but we lose Brenda as well, poor thing. Sorry. So, causes massive explosions. The facility is getting torn apart. It's like severely damaged. Down in the lab, Sue, Franklin, Carter, Jan, and Tom witness this shark has got the stretcher in its jaws and it rams the window looking out into the pen, and you see Jim, still alive because he was hooked up to a respirator, crashed into this window, and the window starts cracking. Now mind you, this is 2 levels down. The pressure is going to crack this glass, and all shit hits the fan. The window shatters. The facility gets flooded. The group goes to the wet entry, and they plan to, they're like, okay, well, where are we? What's going on? We're flooded. They're looking, in this one little air pocket, and they're like, oh, we can go down to go up. Now, mind you, they don't know what's going on with Brenda. They don't know what's going on with Preacher. They only know that group, that this is what they have. So their plan is to go down to the sub, and then take the sub, you can only fit 2 people at a time, but take them up to the top. Well, that's not going to happen, because the sub's kind of been wrecked. Again, they're hypothesizing that it might have been the sharks, because the concussive forces that happen should not have been able to loosen that sub up. So, at the same time, we find out that Preacher and his bird right now are still alive on, I believe, the 1st level, which is starting to flood. He's wandering around, trying to figure out what's going on, if there's anybody alive. He doesn't know that the sharks are, what's going on with the sharks. All he knows is he's in danger, and you can see him kind of starting to have a little mini freak out. And I believe he says something again to the lines of, when he and Russell Franklin, the only 2 African-American characters, or as they call each other, they refer to each other as brother, or brother. You know how that goes. I'm a white girl. I know I should not be saying that, so I'm just saying that is what they refer to each other as. At the birthday party, Preacher mentions, again, about what Franklin did in the Alps, and he says something along the lines of, as if there aren't enough ways for a brother to die, you go out and do that shit. So, again, it made me chuckle, because, again, I'm not chuckling at the, that's funny that it seems like the black guy always dies in the show or the movie. I chuckled because they chose to point out the trope. And they did it with such a straight face. I believe he says something else to the lines of, him not surviving or something, because he's of a certain background. We'll say that much. I don't like those tropes, but at the same time, when they point them out like that, I find that irony funny. But you can tell he's getting freaked out. The bird flops off and runs away, basically, because, he's scared. I get it. See where I'm at in my notes? Okay. We go back to the doctor group, the scientific group. We go back to the group, basically. We find out from Susan that they did break the law. They did break the rules, and they did genetically engineer the shark's brains to speed up the timeline. They were afraid they wouldn't be able to get the shark's brains big enough to harvest enough of this protein. She's very adamant about doing everything she can to make this research work because her father had Alzheimer's, and it really hit home with her. Again, I understand the thought process behind this and the tenacity behind it, but they crossed the line there, and now they're going to pay for it. Because not only did it make the brains bigger, but it did make them smarter. It made them more clever. So now you've got an ancient hunting machine that can think. I will say, for my shark lovers out there, you are going to hear some falsehoods, some perpetualized myths about like sharks smelling blood. Those of you who have seen a lot of the Shark Week episodes of Mythbusters know they're bunk, so just remind yourself this is a Hollywood movie. They're not going to do all their research. But this did inspire a Mythbusters segment on one of the Shark Week episodes. I cannot remember which one. So if you like shark facts, watch the Mythbusters Shark Week episodes. You can look up and find out what they are online and what the myths are that they investigated. Okay. So they're trying to figure out how they're going to leave this sub room. And Scoggins they're all like, well, we can swim it. And Scoggins like, I am not fucking swimming it. He's starting to panic. And he starts ripping stuff away from the walls, because behind that wall is a maintenance shaft with this, a ladder. He says, but the only problem is that if the pressure has been equalized. Again, I'm not an engineer, so if I fuck this up because I do not remember what he says correctly, or they did not give me correct information, I'm sorry. Again, you may gently correct me in the comments. Basically, if it's compromised at the top, the pressures needs to be equalized, and it's going to bring the pool that the sub is in, it's going to cause that pressure to pull water out from there, and it's going to want to equalize, and it will flood. And that's exactly what happens when they decide to take it. Now, they decide to take this chance because Russell Franklin, God love him, decides to take charge. He tells everybody to change into a wetsuit because it will help with hypothermia. And he, tells his story about what happened with the avalanche in the Alps. 7 people survived the snow, but 5 only made it down because I think, how did he put that? He said, if Mother Nature is dangerous, people can be even more so. And he's like, and we are not going to do that. And in the middle of this speech, chomp! One of the sharks comes up from behind and pulls him in the water, and he is gone. So unfortunately, it's kind of a waste on Samuel L. Jackson, but oh my god, that was a great jump scare. It was, and I mean, that was shaping up to be a really good, inspirational speech. So between that happening and then Carter getting Scoggins, back in his right mind, he goes, okay, because Scoggins is the engineer. What's going to happen when this place starts giving? When the pressure, and, he's like, well, first the supports will snap like toothpicks. And he's like, do you want to be down here when that happens? And he's like, nope. Okay, let's go. So, unfortunately, the pressure problem did happen, and the pool did basically kind of explode to fill up the room. They did manage to get into the shaft and start climbing, but unfortunately one of the sharks followed them out. And we lose Jan in a spectacular way. Poor girl. I'll just say, just watch it. It's a very good action shot. We also at this time see that Preacher's made it back to the kitchen, and he's being stalked. We currently have 3 sharks running through. And Sherman is cornered in the oven by one. and it's ramming, and every time it rams, it either turns the oven on or turns the gas up. It hasn't lit yet, so it's just gassing off. Sherman manages to take his he grabs the hatchet that they use for the fire. You know, you have your fire extinguisher and your hatchet there in case you need to break open something. He manages to get out of the oven through the top with the thing. Unfortunately, we lose Bird here. Bird becomes an appetizer for the sharks. So, yeah, we don't like that. Kitchen, he manages to get out. Kitchen is filling with, it's half full of water, now filling full of gas. He manages to take out one of the sharks by blowing up the room. Yay for him. We're down now to 2 sharks. 2 out of 3. One's gone. We still have the big MFer left, though, and then one of the other ones. So, okay. Elevator shaft. Okay. So they end up meeting up when they're in the groups that's climbing up the ladder, sans Jan. So we're down to Scoggins, Carter, Blake, and Susan. End up with Preacher because they're able to open one of the access shafts. And Preacher's like, yeah, you're not getting out over there because that whole area is flooded. It's blocked off. This is about the only dry area left. So, they look at the map and they come up with a plan where Carter and Scoggins are going to go to the lab to activate a control panel that will sump pump off a corridor so they can use the stairs to get upstairs. Yay, great. Good plan. They leave Susan and Preacher there. Well, they go do that. Susan and Preacher are hanging out in Jan's room because they were looking for batteries, and they found them. She decides she's going to go get her research because if that research doesn't come with them, basically everybody dying was was a waste, and Preacher's like, everybody death is a waste. So, we're cutting between the two. Carter and Scoggins managed to make it back down to the lab, to the control panel, which is all submerged, and you think they just got everything set up, and the second shark gets Scogs. Again, these are all CGI kills like this, but they were really clean. They did not glaringly look like, oh, look at me, CGI, and it broke my heart. I really did like Scogs a lot, actually. I mean, he just gets ripped apart. And in the process, the controls get damaged, so that plan's bunk. And while that's happening, Susan's in her room by herself, and she gets attacked by a shark and ends up electrocuting it. So now we're down to the one shark, and it's the big bitch, and the three that are left. So Carter's left, Preacher's left, and Dr. Susan's left. They regroup and go to a decompression chamber. Their plan is to swim to the surface using fire extinguishers wrapped in very colorful life vests as a misdirection because, according to Carter, the shark wrangler, sharks are attracted to churning water and bright colors. So they're hoping that the bright orange of the life vests and the carbon dioxide giving off from the fire extinguisher is enough to distract her so they can swim to the surface. So you think they almost make it. The shark falls for the fire extinguisher, but then it crushes it and comes back, and it grabs Preacher by the leg. But he must have paid attention to Mythbusters because Preacher wears a large crucifix. His nickname is Preacher because he's a man of God. At one point in time, he apparently wasn't, and then he became ultra Christian, which is great for him. He carries this very large, I mean, it's probably as big as my hand, crucifix. This boy must have watched Mythbusters or paid attention to something, because he starts stabbing the shark with his crucifix, and he gets the shark in the eye. Because if I remember correctly, that episode of Mythbusters was you could stop a shark by, or at least slow it down by attacking its eyes or beating it on the nose. And apparently it works, according to Mythbusters. I'm not sure I would ever want to try it, but nice to know that Preacher was able to make that happen and the shark let him go. So he's injured. They managed to get him up onto dry portion of the external structure that's still standing. Get him patched up enough that he's not bleeding everywhere. And then this is where Carter realizes that the sharks have been hurting them to flood the facility. Because while the fences that hold them in at a certain level below the water are reinforced with titanium, from the water's surface level up, they're just plain old steel. They'll be able to make an escape for it. So the sharks managed to figure out a plan to herd the humans to where they needed to so they could flood the facility and sink it. She's going to make a break for it. God forbid what happens if this thing makes it out in open water. So to keep her from escaping, they come up with a plan. Carter comes up with a plan. He gets a car battery or boat battery, something like that. His harpoon gun, some of the chemical from the flares that makes it go, makes it light up. And he sets it up so that if he can harpoon the shark and then use... So there's the cartridge right here. When the cartridge is attached to a metal wire, which shoots out of the harpoon, the metal wire will get touched to the positive terminal on the battery, causing the stuff from the flares in the cartridge to go boom and hopefully take the shark out and go boom. This is what the Mythbusters tested. I cannot remember again on what Shark Week episode it was, but it was really cool. Well, in order to distract the shark from ramming the fence, Susan decides to use herself as bait. Cuts her hand because sharks smell blood. Again, not true. What you think that they're smelling when you're chumming the water is not the blood from the chunks of fish. It's the fish guts. They smell fish. That's why they attack chummed water. Or that's why they amass in chummed water. Free meal. They smell fish. She cuts her hand, jumps into the water to bring the shark back in. Carter can't take a shot. She ends up getting eaten. And honestly, I hate to say it because I'm not usually this cruel, but since this is a fictional character, this is kind of karma coming back on her for what she ended up doing. Now, you don't make a predator like that super smart. So it kind of turned around on her. And, karma can be a real bitch sometimes. So Carter ends up in the water. He does that same flippy, dippy move that he did at the beginning with the shark with the license plate in its mouth. And at this point, Preacher's joined the game again. And he manages to shoot the shark through the dorsal fin, but also manages to get Carter through the leg. But Carter's like, yells at him to light her up. Well, he manages to explode the shark just after she rammed her way through the fence, dislodging Carter. So Carter and Preacher survived excuse me, I burped. The shark is dead, and lo and behold, the Monday morning shift is coming up on them in the boat. So they do end up getting rescued. I'm going to assume now, I don't know if either one of them kept their leg, but that's the end of the story. That is the end of the movie, and then I love this movie. This movie's got such great action. It's got such a great cast. It's a brilliant idea. This is a great successor to Jaws when it comes to marine-based horror. You know, if you want a shark movie, don't watch Sharknado. Watch this shit. This is good. This is well done. So yeah, this was just some notes on the development and a few other random things that come to mind here. So this was conceived by Duncan Kennedy, who's an Australian screenwriter, after he witnessed the result of a horrific shark attack on a beach near his home. All shark attacks, you know, where a shark manages to chomp into a human are pretty horrific because of those teeth. But mind you, they're not actively in the real world. Sharks are not actively out hunting humans. Half the time they think you're a big, fat, tasty seal. Because they don't know no better. So witnessing this gave him a recurring nightmare of being in a passageway with sharks that could read his mind, and then he just ran with it. But he did acknowledge the challenge of writing a shark film and not repeating Jaws. So, Warner's bought the script in '94, but they didn't start development until 2 years later. The script went through rewrites, and then they got to going. The sharks were, like I said, a mixture of very good CGI from several different companies. ILM was even involved at one point in time, and animatronics. Now, people who know me, and know me well, know that one of my favorite television shows growing up, and one that I have revisited as an adult, especially recently, is 1993's seaQuest DSV from NBC. Yes, that's my first exposure to Ted Raimi. Those of you who also know about the Ted thing on this channel. That was my first exposure to Ted. So, that's part of the reason why seaQuest will always keep a certain place in my heart. But I say that because the same company that did, I believe, I was having trouble finding my note or the article I read about seaQuest to double check this. I actually had that article saved. But I believe the same company that made the animatronic sharks, and I'm going to probably break some Xenial kids' hearts here. Maybe, even some older late Gen Xers, and definitely some millennial kids who grew up watching that with the talking dolphin on seaQuest. Darwin was not a real dolphin, guys. Darwin was a very fancy, very advanced animatronic. And I believe the company that made Darwin also made our animatronic sharks for this company. So, for this film. So, I'm sorry to be the bearer of bad news, because I know when the show was on, they didn't let that out. That was a big secret. They wanted you to think that the dolphin was real. And I know at one point they tried to use real dolphins. But real dolphins are smart and get bored easily. And, ruin takes by splashing people or kind of just looking at you and fucking off because they're bored and they want to go find something to do. So, animatronic Darwin and these animatronic sharks share a company. seaQuest has also has another one definite share and one I suspect share. Shared experience personnel. The voice of the bird was done by Frank Welker, who also did Darwin's vocoder voice. Also known as, Scooby-Doo, and I believe Optimus Prime. That Frank Welker. did the voice of Bird and Darwin on seaQuest DSV. There is also a male's voice that did a voiceover for one of the computers. I want to say it was the weather report in the radio tower with Brenda. I could not find the credit for that voice, but that voice is distinctive enough. I believe that this is my thought process. This is me saying this is what it sounds like. There's no credit for this. I've been unable to find the credit for this voice, but it sounds like actor Kent McCord. Now, sci-fi fans know Kent McCord from Farscape on Sci-Fi. He played John Crichton's dad. He also did about 3 episodes of seaQuest DSV as a recurring character who was an astronaut. So, Deep Blue Sea, DSV. I guess I met in the middle there. The only thing it was missing was Ted Raimi or Roy Scheider, which is funny because Roy Scheider was in Punisher with Thomas Jane, who was in this movie. I just can't shake seaQuest. I'm sorry. I know that was a tangent, and I apologize. I just thought it was kind of funny. It's like when I watched Necronomicon, Book of the Dead, totally not expecting any kind of Evil Dead references, and we got Joseph LoDuca doing the music and Bruce Campbell's wife doing the costumes. I like those little coincidences, and yes, I'll talk about those. But y'all, if you have not seen this movie, you really need to. It is an action-packed, very well played popcorn movie. You will not regret the time. I think it was 105 minutes. Yes, the running time of 105 minutes. You will not regret this. I highly suggest watching Deep Blue Sea from 1999. So on that note, we're going to end on a really high note with that. I'm just going to say a good night, my creeplings, and everybody say it with me. I'll see you next time. Bye.